Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The idea of a Filip Hrgovic and Martin Bakole fight seemingly come out of nowhere, left field. But from what I can tell, online people seem to love the idea. Filip Hrgovic, the unbeaten prospect, Martin Bakole a little further on in his career, one loss on the ledger to Michael Hunter, that was back in 2018, but he's since had a pretty good 2019, and I tell you what, this fight, if it actually comes off, it's a cracker. Be a great fight for the heavyweight division, two up-and-coming guys, and it would tell us a lot about both. But where has this come from? Because seemingly Bakole's manager, Billy Nelson, doesn't really know. So you can see here on screen, these are some posts that are on Billy Nelson's Twitter page. The idea of the Bakole and Hrgovic fight, people seem to really like the idea, and so do I. But where did it come from? And someone actually asked Billy Nelson that. This person here said, Danny says, has Hrgovic actually agreed to fight? But Billy Nelson says, I manage Martin and it's not been mentioned to me. It really stems from an alleged Instagram from Kalle. So Kalle being Kalle Sauerland, and I went to the Sauerland brothers Instagram page just to check out, well, where is this? I didn't actually find any mention of Bakole and Hrgovic from Kalle Sauerland direct, but he was posting about Filip Hrgovic's current rise in the WBC rankings. He's up to number 7, up 3 places in the latest ranking. So he says El Animal at Filip Hrgovic is up to number 7 in the heavyweight world rankings. Would love to see Andy Destroyer, Dillian Whyte, Joe Joyce boxing this year. Who would you like to see El Animal to beat en route to becoming heavyweight champ? And actually you can see here just below that, so Dillian Whyte coming in here trying to sort of smack down Kalle Sauerland and the idea of a fight with him, saying, get off the coke my friend, take some good advice from a friend. And in terms of a Dillian Whyte and Hrgovic fight in 2020, it would seem that the possibility is remote. Dillian Whyte is probably going to be facing higher profile opponents than Filip Hrgovic, who are a bit further on in their career, more established. And it's not to say that Hrgovic couldn't beat Whyte, but obviously he's a prospect at this stage, about 10 fights on the ledger. It's high risk and probably lower reward than some other options out there. And remembering Dillian Whyte is owed a title shot in the WBC. He's the WBC mandatory challenger as well as the interim champion. But when I had a look at the rest of the post, the comments, where was the mention of Bakole and Hrgovic? Couldn't find it. I saw one person write Bakole's name, but that was it. Didn't see any reference from Kalle Sauerland. So whether this has just grown legs from nothing, or perhaps Kalle Sauerland had mentioned something in a comment, I don't know. But obviously people have been talking about it, and it's a very good fight. And like I said, it would tell us a lot about both guys and where they're really at, because Bakole, up until 2018, had a very sort of big buzz developing behind him. But that sort of drifted off after the loss to Michael Hunter. He got stopped late in that fight. He had a bit of an injury, but also he looked to give up at points. He didn't look on point in the fight, finding fresh air most of the night, but since made a lot of changes, and in 2019 he stopped Marius Wok on his feet, became one of the few people to actually defeat Marius Wok like that. Remembering Dillian Whyte just fought Marius Wok in December and made a pretty hard work of it overall, where Bakole really battered him over, 7 or 8 rounds or so. So Bakole coming back, and he stopped Rodney Hernandez, and he's had another good win or two under his belt. And he's going to be a guy who's a very dangerous threat to anyone in the heavyweight division. I think he can be in some very good fights, even with some guys in the top 10, top 15. But for him, securing those fights is going to be easier said than done, because a lot of guys will avoid him because he's, like Hrgovic to some extent, high risk, low reward, still considered, a mid sort of tier heavyweight because he hasn't risen through some of those steps. And it's a similar situation for Hrgovic. Obviously a very dangerous fighter. He's got power, good skills, but can he get into the mix for those bigger fights in 2020? I would say for both of these guys, it's more like 2021 that they're on sort of course for the bigger fights. But if they were to fight each other right now, that's a really interesting matchup. Hard to pick a winner, actually. I mean, I would lean towards Filip Hrgovic. I mean, I've just seen a lot more of Hrgovic, including the amateur career. But obviously, with some of Filip Hrgovic's most recent fights, he's been bulking up. He hasn't looked as fluid. He's looked a little bit stiff, whereas Bakole has gone the other way. He seemingly has improved a lot since his 2018 loss to Michael Hunter. Hrgovic coming up, getting more bulky, doesn't seem to have that sort of Vitaly Klitschko-esque sort of fluidness that he once had. But I like the fight, and I would like to see it. If they made this, I think both could come back and still have very good careers, and both could probably still be a champion at some point. This would be one of those, at this point in their career, they could both recover. And I like it for a lot of reasons, and it probably isn't one of those fights that makes either a lot of money, but in the context of the heavyweight division, it's a very meaningful fight. And I think the winner of that would instantly springboard themselves into a much better position to contend for a heavyweight title. So I hope it happens, but given Billy Nelson, no one's spoken to him, he doesn't know where it's come from, probably unlikely. But obviously the sort of Bush telegraph on the internet just took off after the mention that this fight could be made. I've seen a number of videos sort of dropping stories, all sorts. Yeah, so people like it, and hopefully they do make it, or at least some of those type of level fights. I mean, Hughie Fury versus Filip Hrgovic, or Hughie Fury versus Martin Bakole, something like that. Those are decent fights. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.